I want to go ahead and get started today and do a quick intro for everyone and dive right into the topic. So, welcome everyone who's joining us today. My name is Amy Frampton. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Nava Benefits. And just quickly, for those of you who are just getting to know us, we're a full service benefits brokerage, and we're oriented around the mission to provide high quality, affordable healthcare to all Americans. It's something I'm super excited to be a part of. And really appreciate you joining this important conversation today, everyone who's joining us on the Zoom. So today we're going to be talking about a really important topic that's on everyone's minds, AI. Like, I don't think there's anyone who is on the Zoom or who's not on the Zoom who has not heard about this and how the trends are going to affect us. Today we're going to be digging into AI's role in healthcare, employee benefits, and how AI is going to be is going to be affecting the role in HR. So together we're going to be digging into a few main areas of impact. Where are we in terms of the current landscape? What future trends are our panelists seeing? What risks do we want to be aware of? And then next steps. And our goal is to both give you a view of the landscape, but then also have you walk away with some great next steps that you can take back to your business, to your leadership teams, etc. So we'll work to make this both strategic and tactical for you, so you walk away with great action items. That's really important. So joining us today, we've got an amazing panel. Mark is here with us, and he oversees startups at OpenAI. And thrilled to have him here from him. Kareem is here, a partner at Thrive Capital, works in this space very actively across a large portfolio. Tim is the product lead for benefits and PEO at Rippling. And then Donald is the co-founder and chief product officer at Nava. So let's kick things off and kind of get into the current landscape, set the stage for where we are and where we've come over the last few years. This one's for everyone. We know AI is currently being hailed as a transformative force, just really across the board. And we're talking about it in everything that we do as consumers, as business people, but also in healthcare and employee benefits. I'd love to hear what you're most excited about in this space and how it will impact HR leaders. Like, just what's top of mind as an exciting part of this for you. So, I'm just going to call Donald, you start. We're going to start with you and we're going to go to everyone on this.
Yeah, totally. I know we all sort of looked at one another like,
Everyone's
who's
being
gonna,
polite for the first question. Yep.
yeah. This is, obviously sort of top of mind for everyone right now, as you said. I think, we're going to talk a lot about sort of like benefits and healthcare related stuff. I mean, maybe to answer this question, I'll just zoom out for a second. And, I've been working at tech startups since, I don't know, 2006 or so, which is crazy because it's almost been 2 decades. I know it's like, you're getting old when you can be like, I've been in this industry for 2 decades. And things were really exciting, like when the iPhone came out and, just like the move to mobile, we had this just decade of just interesting technology was fun. People were just constantly sort of like breaking new ground. And then I don't know exactly when it happened, but it feels like the technology industry kind of got a little boring for a while. It's like, oh yeah, it's just another one of those. It's just another one of those things, another one of those things. And I gotta say, the last 2 years have been so exciting again in technology. As someone who loves building products and loves watching other people build products, I feel like I've got more ideas than I know what to do with. And I just can spend, like hours scrolling through Twitter or tech blogs or other things and just getting so excited and like inspired by like what other people are building. And just candidly, it's probably been 5, 6, 7 years since I've really kind of felt that way.
That's awesome. Mark, let's hear from you at top.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm most excited about, we've gone from this era of, I think, most folks having familiarity with AI in the form of chatbots and ChatGPT being a piece of that. I think we're moving into an era where, because of the reasoning capabilities of the models improving so dramatically in such a short time, that what you'll be able to do and hand off tasks to AI and allow agents to perform tasks on your behalf grounded in data and instructions, but being able to use reasoning to actually go take action, or suggest and plan actions in the real world. That's going to open up just a whole new set of possibilities that's way beyond, having an instant response from a chatbot. So, the canonical examples of, can I have an agent go, book my travel, flight, hotel in a new city I haven't been to before, but taking into account my preferences, and and sort of going and doing longer running tasks on my behalf, or assisting in research that I want to go do, but maybe constrained on human resourcing, and be able to actually be a real assistant in hard, technical, challenging research that really wasn't possible with prior generation of technology. And there are countless other examples, but I think that transition point is going to open up just a lot more possibilities across every domain professionally and personally. So quite excited about the reasoning capabilities and what that means for agents to go do things on our behalf.
I love that. Tim, how about you? The top
Yeah, I
question.
mean,
What are
I
you
think,
excited about?
yeah, echoing a lot of Donald's, just like it's just a really exciting time. It seems like every week there's something new that comes out in healthcare, in AI more broadly. I think like t tactically, uh, there's two things I'm really excited about. One, which I think particularly like in HR and benefits, there's 20 to 30% of everyone's job that is their kind of like least favorite part of their job, digging through spreadsheets, dealing with carriers. And so I think a lot of the advances that Mark was referring to are going to enable that part of your job to be taken care of by AI. And so you can spend more of your day on both the higher impact activities and the part of your job you enjoy more than, dealing with a discrepancy from a carrier or something. And the second one is just around like insights. And so being able to unlock, real-time support for you, for your team, to help you better understand what's going on your company, provide guidance. And so just, eliminating kind of the part of your day that's your least favorite while empowering, you and your team to have superpowers to, understand benefits, use benefits, navigate your job within HR. I think the impact of those two is going to be really profound.
Excellent. Kareem, we'll end this one with you.
Yeah, well, it's not surprising to hear a lot of AI enthusiasts for an AI panel,
Yes.
but I do think there is a lot of reality to the hype. And of course, we're going to get ahead of ourselves a little bit as we've done with every big transformation. When computers came out, people said, why would someone need a personal computer? We can just share them. And obviously now that's so obvious. Or when the internet came out, people would never thought we would transact on the internet. That's just too risky. Why would you ever put your credit card info? And now it's the default way people are buying cars on their phones now, and kind of the transition. Same thing when the iPhone came out. While it was impressive, people's like, well, all I need to do is make phone calls with my phone. So why would I need, access to the internet? If I need that, I'll just do it when I go home. And so I think similar here with AI, the potential is really dramatic. But despite, I think, the hiccups along the way, I would just encourage people to kind of step back and realize that sometimes these trends are bumpy, but that doesn't take away from where it's going to go. And so it's with that lens and that caveat that I say I'm super enthusiastic, even knowing that there's going to be bumps along the road. And the big thing that I'm super excited about is I just think it's going to make work a lot more human for folks. And I think that's particularly important in the HR and benefits space, especially in industry where people got into because they want to interact with people, because they want to help with people, because they want to get the best out of individuals. And while technology's brought so many good things to that space, I think one of the negative things potentially that came, or negative externalities that came, is people are spending more time in front of computers and less time interacting with people because more and more work has shifted there. And I think with AI, especially with the evolution of agents, as Mark was talking about, there's a chance now to actually make that job a lot more human-centered, because a lot of the things that are actually going to happen that happen on a computer can be done by agents, which will be much better than humans at it. And people can kind of actually embrace and do more of the work that they want to do, to Tim's point.
I love your comment on making it more human. What do you think the biggest misconceptions are about AI? Maybe that's one of them, but
Yeah.
what are you thinking about that?
Yeah, that's definitely, maybe I'll just kick it off. That's definitely one. I think people think more AI means that I actually get less time with humans. And I think what's kind of ruined it for us is Mark's point of the first wave of chatbots, or like the phone trees that everyone hates, and you just yell representative, representative. I actually think in the future, you're going to be excited that there's an AI talking to you around some of these things because it'll plug into the systems that you have and pull out the information and be infinitely patient with you. And you won't have to wait 15 minutes to talk to someone. And when you call back, you won't get a different person. It'll pick off exactly where it left off and there's a history. And so I actually think what the misconception is that it's going to end up being a worse experience than a human, but it's going to be cheaper. And that's why people are going to do it. Actually, I think we're finding to be a much better experience around certain dimensions than alternative interacting with a human. But and for those tasks, it's gonna be amazing. And then for the things that humans are uniquely special at, connecting with folks, some of the judgment, the advising, the consulting elements that come into it, we're going to see more people being able to dedicate their time there versus spending time on some of the tasks that would be better done by a robot.
I love that. Thank you. Mark, you are obviously at OpenAI and seeing so many businesses, startups and others using AI. What are the technical advancements that you see kind of coming down the line that people should be paying attention to now?
Yeah, so I mean, so I think the reasoning capabilities improving is definitely one, and we've talked a little bit about that. Another that I'm just very, very excited for is the multiple modalities that AI can encapsulate. So audio is one that I think just has a ton of promise. And OpenAI has released recently our real-time API, which is an audio to audio model. So the idea is you can talk directly to an AI and have it talk back in human level response times and latency. So having a conversation as an entry point and a first party user interface to more and more applications, meaning, I'll give you an example. Speak is a language learning app startup that we work closely with. They, imagine learning a language that's just a natural conversation on topics that you care about, personalized to your learning pace and ability. But being able to have that as a real conversation rather than typing messages onto your phone or into a computer opens up a whole new possibility. And it's just a much more enjoyable way to have that experience. Another example is, we have a demo where you can navigate a 3D model of the solar system and answer questions and learn about different planets and how much water is on Earth and what's the largest peak on Mars, and being able to do that where the visualization is happening in response, in real-time response to your conversation, is a whole different way of learning and exploring a space. So I think we're in the early days of developers and companies building with audio capabilities, and I think there's a lot of folks starting with the obvious applications, customer support, and some of some of those kinds of use cases. But you can imagine that being an interface to a wide variety of applications and technologies. We did another demo that was. Imagine you're calling a 911 operator and wanted to have an AI powered or AI assisted application that can actually go and take action in the real world. It's just a demo. It's not something that's ready for prime time. But again, you can start to see the possibilities, and that's another one we're quite excited about.
It's awesome. And you mentioned Speak. Are there other companies that you want to call out as things that they're doing that you're really excited about?
Yes. So in the healthcare space, we've done a lot of work with companies that are trying to take the ambient audio of a patient and doctor conversation, and it's an unstructured data source, but actually make sense of that, help convert it into a structured note, and some of the downstream uses of those notes that remove a lot of the drudgery that clinicians have to go through on a daily basis just to capture notes and sort of get those into a usable form for billing systems, for EMR, et cetera. And so we work with a number of startups that are tackling that problem with different technologies. And I think what's amazing about the healthcare space is there's just a trove of unstructured data, and being able to do things like prepare notes for clinician prior to the meeting with a patient and summarize an entire chart that might be 90 or 100 pages on the patient's medical history and make really good sense of that so a doctor can open up and see exactly what's most relevant and most important. So that's one category. We've worked with startups across a wide range. So Cursor is a company that's building an AI-powered coding application. So most developers today are using AI in their day-to-day workflow to write code, to try to debug code, to um, do complicated processes as they're building software applications. Cursor is one of the leading applications in that space, really pushing the boundaries of how you use AI in a coding context. Um, Decagon and Sierra and Maven AGI are companies that are reinventing the customer support experience and trying to automate what is a very heavily human process to answer tickets on various kinds of support scenarios across many different industries. But the AI has gotten really, really good. And with smart engineering on top of the AI, you can actually either assist a support agent and give them the right relevant context to help answer the customer's question that's coming in, or in some cases automate the response and do that overnight and in odd hours and in many different languages that is hard to support with just a fully human workforce in many places. So those are a few examples, but pretty diverse industries that are applying AI and creating really nice user and sort of customer experiences on top of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Cream, you like Mark are working with a portfolio of partnerships. I'd love to hear some of the innovative use cases you're seeing, some success stories you're seeing as you look across that in healthcare and beyond.
Yeah, definitely. I think that to step back, I think it's been curious. I've been impressed by how quickly some of even these regulated industries have stepped in to embracing it. And I think a big part too is a lot of these industries, both in the healthcare space or the financial services space or in the legal space, have just been constrained by people and labor. And so there just hasn't been enough support to be able to do that. And so we've been partnering with accounting firms nationwide. We've been aggregating. We're a top 40 accounting firm now in terms of working with all these different folks. And that's a profession that's extremely important, but there's just been a huge supply demand imbalance. And so now we're able to use AI capabilities to increase the efficiency massively of a lot of these accounts. And at first, I thought there was going to be a hesitancy to embrace because I think they'd be nervous. But I think the fact that there's a shortage and they feel like they can support more customers, they saw that as upside for their businesses. And one of these accounts actually shared a narrative to me, which is when QuickBooks came out, the average accountant could only service about 10 customers before then. And then after QuickBooks, they could serve 100. And so what happened actually is the accountant income increased by 100-fold over that period of time. And so similarly with the capabilities around AI, feeling like I can serve and operate at a larger scale, we've just kind of seen that impact. And even today, we're seeing it drastically improve their efficiency across the board. I think similar thing that we're seeing on the legal side, where we're actually seeing some law firms being able to service much more clients than they were before and changing kind of the forecast and their ability. And these are the things that we enjoy because legal services are so expensive. It's $2,000 an hour. Now they can start to access a new part of the market because if my time is being expanded, I can start to service different customers at different cost points because of these capabilities. And so that's been encouraging to see. And then particularly on the healthcare side, I think it's no secret that we've seen labor shortages a lot on the clinical side. I think to echo what Mark was saying on the clinical notes and documentation, that's something that I've just seen doctors really pick up on because, back to my earlier point too, a lot of these doctors trained in med school because they want to spend time with patients and consult. If you ask a doctor today, they get to spend like 5 minutes with a patient and then spend 20 minutes writing a report afterwards to file all the steps and to react to insurance. And so to be like, let me take those 20 minutes and be able to partner with a solution that's going to help me. And now my 5-minute call can actually be a 15, 20-minute conversation where I can maybe get to those questions that I wouldn't have otherwise, or be able to surface something about family history or surface something about a habit at home that then unlocks, treatment and care, be able to communicate the plan. That's just been very encouraging and exciting to see broadly.
It's a really interesting example, particularly on the healthcare piece, because I think you're absolutely right. I mean, doctors, they need to help patients and to be with patients. And so that's a huge lift for them. Tim, as you think about your work at Rippling, obviously you're doing a number of things with AI that's super relevant to our audience, whether it's recruiting, benefits, whether they have a PEO plan or not, talent management. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on at Rippling in this space.
Yeah. So we've like taken a philosophy, kind of first look at a lot of the primitives of what we do, and are those primitives ready for AI? And so looking at things like, hey, how can we make sure that we have all of the right data, that it's clean, that it's accurate, so that when AI acts on top of that data, it's giving, accurate results. Second thing we really looked at is our permissioning and security. And so being able to ensure that only the right people and the right data is available to kind of, any AI application built on top of our platform. And the third is really just about impact. So do you have flexible workflows and reporting so that when you have insights or things are discovered, you can actually act on those insights? And so the three buckets we started to apply these is really within like automating a lot of behind the scenes work. So in benefits, things like, carrier setups and discrepancy management, enrollment confirmation. So a lot of these kind of like lower level tasks that need to be completed at high accuracy, and an AI system can be always on, and being able to do that instead of you having to go and manually check these things. In recruiting, it's things like smart scheduling, so being able to, really seamlessly schedule for candidates in your team. Building reporting via natural language processing. So instead of having to go in and select all of the columns and select, filter all the data, you can just describe the type of report that you want to run, and then the system will automatically create the report. Another big bucket for us is around kind of delivering previously impossible insights. So we launched Talent Signal a few weeks ago, where it looks at, all of the data you have on your employee base across a variety of systems, and starts to look at what are the behaviors and type of work being done by your top performers, and how does that look compared to your bottom performers. And so starts to be able to identify coaching insights really focused on the first 90 days after an employee starts. We're saying, hey, this employee is struggling in this area. And so it gives managers, a third party view of how their team is performing, and helps them, better surface those insights to help coach and better manage the team, and kind of get the team more towards the behaviors and outcomes of top performers. And then the third area is about data summarization and answering questions. So things like taking all the feedback that's been entered on a candidate, and being able to summarize that to speed up kind of decisions and insights around the recruiting workflow. And then we've actually been working with one of the companies that Mark mentioned up front around our support. So how do we have always on high quality chat support? Obviously falls back to our support team if you're not getting what you need from that chat experience, but enabling you to get the right answers faster and higher quality answers faster. And so we kind of view it, we're very, very early days. We're probably 3% built in terms of the breadth of what we do at Rippling across HR and spend and IT and all these other areas. And I think probably 3% built in benefits of what we're looking at for the next few years. But very excited about kind of having the right primitives in place that enable us to, build applications on top of our data, and then partner, with companies like Nava to help them leverage that data to build their own experiences.
Awesome. Perfect segue. You did it for me, Tim. I'm gonna move over and ask Donald a question. And Donald and I work together, obviously, at Nava. So I won't be too formal, but I'd love if you'd share what we're working on at Nava, and kind of lessons learned that you think that SMBs can take away and use in their own businesses.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we're doing a bunch when it comes to AI and some of these technologies at Nava. Some of those things are maybe a bit more obvious, some are less obvious. I'll start with the obvious one, and this is, I think this is true sort of in the benefit space generally. We're seeing a lot of companies looking at the experience of the member or the employee. And one of the biggest challenges in benefits is people have a hard time remembering what is even offered to them, and then two, just like understanding how any of this stuff works. People are oftentimes afraid. They might have health insurance, but they're afraid to go to the doctor because they don't know how much it's going to cost them, just out of pocket, right? And some of that, of course, is just the way the healthcare system is set up right now. We sort of go in, you don't know what the doctor's going to charge the insurance company, and sort of how that flows through. But in some cases, these things are very knowable. It's like, I'm just going to go to the PCP, and there's a PCP copay, that's built in. It's going to be $50. Like the answer is like, it's going to be $50. It's in the plan summary right there. But like your average employee wouldn't even begin to know where to look to get the answer to that question. And so I think we've seen a lot of is people just sort of just crossing their fingers and just hoping they're like, YOLO, I have no idea how much it's going to cost me to go. But all too often just maybe not going or deferring that until like the last minute, where they're like, I don't know how much it's going to cost, but I really, really now do need to go. So, building assistants where it can take all of this information, whether it's, the medical stuff that we've been talking about, but even dental, how much is it going to cost for a dental cleaning? That's like an important question. And, it's gonna be $400. $400 is a lot of money to a lot of people. And so being able to let people go, how much does it cost for a dental cleaning? How much does it cost for a new set of frames for my glasses? How much does it cost if I go see a dermatologist or something along those lines? We can answer those questions now with pretty much instantaneously, which in addition to kind of just obviously that being better for the employee, instantly getting the answer, not feeling, and kind of in a way, like not feeling dumb, like having to go to my HR team and go, how much does it cost if I go to the doctor? Most people are maybe like a little shy or embarrassed that like they don't know the answer to that. So being able to just quickly get an answer from an AI in a sort of like relatively anonymous way is pretty cool. But maybe less obviously, unless you actually work in benefits, HR teams, they do they do get a lot of these questions. And these are difficult questions to answer because every employee has like a unique skew almost of like what have they elected, what were their benefits elections, and so in order if I work in HR and somebody asks me how much does it cost if I need to go to PCP or the dermatologist, I'm gonna have to go like into the HRIS system, say into Rippling and sort of pull that up and which plan did they choose, and pull up the plan documents, which is wherever those are, and then dig through one of those things. That could be an hour at least of work just to answer that one sort of simple question. So anyway, that's out there. We've launched that. We're super excited. We're seeing a lot of other, a lot of other benefits companies sort of going that same direction, which we're excited to see. We're also using AI in a lot of ways behind the scenes too. We could probably talk for an hour on it. I won't. But just when it comes to just renewal strategy and how we sort of think about what are the optimal plans for this group based on all of sort of the knowable things about them, whether it's claims experience, whether it's what employees have enrolled in right now, what networks employees are on, which geographies that they're in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is, we're sort of, like Tim said, maybe 3% of the way in there. I think it's probably sort of true in the world of Nava as well. But boy, like that 3% is already extremely exciting. And as we sort of go from 3% to 10% to 20% of like our kind of longer term vision there, I just think the unlock for employers and the HR teams who are sort of driving this inside of companies is just going to be so impactful.
I love the enthusiasm and I'm so excited about everything that I'm hearing. Chip had a good question though, as we kind of think about what are the risks, the security, compliance, HIPAA, all the things that we're thinking about. I'd love to dive into that next a little bit, just about how do we make sure the right guardrails are in place. And Mark, I'll go to you first as you're seeing this across a bunch of companies. How do we make AI not actually feel more trustworthy only, but be more trustworthy and reliable in sensitive situations, especially when you're dealing with PII and healthcare? What innovations are you seeing come across the board that will help us all feel more comfortable as we move ahead?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, from the OpenAI perspective, we take security very, very seriously and have enterprise grade security posture across the platform. So things like, how is my data used if I'm making an API call to the OpenAI API? We do not use that data for training new models or in any other way. It's really enterprise grade and how its privacy and security are handled at OpenAI using the API or our ChatGPT enterprise product. So the general posture is very, very strong. I think there's a lot of other considerations on how this data is used in sensitive situations. For example, hallucinations are a fact of LLMs, and a lot of the work I'm engineering with LLMs and with these models is how do I ground the model and the responses that the model is creating in sources of truth that are relevant so for example, I have a corpus of documents and data that are HR documents or are proprietary company data that when my internal employees are using this AI product I'm building, I want that data to be the source of truth that's referenced and have the responses to my questions, grounded in the specifics of my company. So there are a lot of techniques that developers and startups and enterprises use to do that. Retrieval is sort of the general category, but it's how do I inject, alongside the customer or the user question, inject the right information so that the model can decide, okay, I'm going to reference the HR policies of this company in response to that user's question. So that's one technique, is sort of the grounding, and there's a lot of different techniques to try to do that well. But generally, almost every application of AI is using that, at least in the enterprise setting. The second is around guardrails and moderation. I think this is probably more applicable where there's user-generated input or user-generated content, and you actually want to make sure that the model's responses have guardrails and maybe adhere to your brand guidelines or safety and other guidelines. So we provide some tooling to do this. We have a moderation API, but there's also ways to use the models themselves to help implement some of the guardrails and ensure that let's say it's a chatbot, is answering questions that are only relevant to the domain that chatbot has been built to answer, and it's not answering other questions and can sort of safely have an off ramp in those situations. The third is where can a human actually be inserted in the loop in an application or in a process where the AI may take one of those off ramps and say, actually, I don't I can't answer that question, or have low probability of answering it successfully, and say, okay, this is going to be kicked out. Let's say it's a customer support application. This is actually going to get kicked out to a human who will take over from here, or have a human assisted by the AI where a sample response is written by the AI, but the human actually has to edit and review and publish it before it goes back to the user. So there's lots of ways to design around some of the limitations and sensitivities of the models, but these are a few that I think are very common in practice.
Definitely. And I think maybe to add on this, I think one dimension which Mark laid out clearly is the privacy and the data and the infrastructure and the enterprise grade security. Of course, I think it just highlights it's important to pick the right partner when you work and kind of embrace some of these new tools, who understands it and invests heavily behind it. I think the second question, which also Mark touched on the end, but maybe I'll add some thoughts, which is around how do we know the AI answer is correct or is giving me kind of the right output or the right outcome? How can we learn to trust it? And obviously, it's impossible to say that every answer is going to be 100% correct. But I do think what's going to be really interesting is that it's going to be way more personalized to each individual. So I would bet that AI answers, and we've done, you've seen the benchmarking data out there, but AI answers in general are going to be not just more accurate on general knowledge, but to the individual. Because to Donald's point, it's going to not just give you general benefits advice, it's going to access your specific benefits plan and the one that you selected within your company to help advise you. It'll potentially have historical claims data to be able to reference and indicate and understand where you are in your treatment cycle and how to best push you to the next step or the right person to talk to around that. I think we're seeing it on the clinical side too, going back to clinical examples. Doctors on average follow clinical guidelines 50% of the time. And so I think you should think about like standardization of quality and insight, where we've gotten the best minds in the medical community to decide this is the right action to take for an individual who generates these symptoms. And as good as our doctors are, they're following or getting the right answer about half the time. And so as I look at this, again, AI might not be perfect across all dimensions, but I just think we're going to see a real elevation of quality across the board because it's going to know you personally and it's going to know what's latest in that moment. And especially on the benefit side, I guess the customization, how many times people called a carrier to try to get details on this and get a different answer based on the type of person you talk to. And so I think you're just going to end up with a lot more consistency through, which is going to end up to better outcomes for everyone.
Yeah, we had a comment in the chat that aligned to that, Kareem, around Donald's comment that it's your own benefit SKU, right? Like you get more custom content and more universally correct content as you start to dive into that. So I love that, and I appreciated Mark's comment there. Tim and
Amy, maybe.
Oh, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know if we were going to transition to the next thing, but I was like, I got something to say on this.
Yeah,
but,
no, say it.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, just kind of threading this needle of I mean, just very candidly, like at Nava, we knew that this was the type of thing that we wanted to build, but we sort of had this like design challenge, which was every employee has a custom SKU, and we don't think just like general benefits, like knowledge and general benefits answer, like what's the difference between an HSA and an FSA? We're like, that's not useful. Like this need to be able. Someone needs to be able to ask, like, how much do I pay? How much do I need to pay for diagnostic imaging and get the correct answer to that question? How do we do that without sort of, you know, doing something sort of creepy or that people would not want with their PII? Like, oh, hey, you're sending my information, my name, my home address, or something. My question. Why would an AI know that? Like, I need diagnostic imaging. How do we separate those two concerns? And what we did, I imagine probably lots of other companies are taking similar approaches here, although I can't speak for them. When a user asks a question in the Nava Benefits app, the AI is just one part of this overall kind of collection of different pieces of software and modules and services that we've built to kind of create this user experience. If a question goes in and this answer comes back. And it starts with, of course, the app itself. But then as soon as that question goes through, that doesn't go directly to the AI. We say, okay, cool. Who is asking this question? What are their benefits elections? And make sure we pull those documents, right? So we say, oh, they have this specific medical plan, this specific dental plan, all the way sort of down the line. We take those documents and we take the question, and then we completely disembody them from the person. And we just send to the AI, here is some knowledge that you have. And again, there is nothing specific to any individual. These are just insurance plan documents, just generic off-the-shelf United Healthcare or Aetna insurance plan documents. And here's just a question. And this question could have been asked by a person. This question could have been asked by another AI. This question could have just been graffiti on the side of the building. It's just a question. Answer this question using this specific set of documents right here, this unique sort of constellation of documents. The AI doesn't know who the person is. The AI doesn't know what company or employer this originated from. The AI doesn't even know if it's a human asking the question. The AI's only job is to just create a response to that. And at the end of the day, we talk to a lot of just everyday sort of people. We talk to a lot of our clients about this. And when we sort of broke it down like that, what we found was, people felt really comfortable with that approach when they understood kind of just the chain of how this was sort of all working under the hood. Typically, we don't get into that level of detail, but since this is a nerdy AI panel with like nerdy AI enthusiasts, I thought it might be interesting.
I love that. And actually leads into a great, understanding if that's something that HR leaders should be understanding what's under the hood. Like, do we all need to nerd out? I mean, Donald and Tim in particular, your day is spent supporting HR leaders and their teams. What would you say to the HR leaders what questions they need to ask? About whether it's HIPAA, security, if it's a third-party app, what would you suggest to them to ask?
I'm sorry, Amy, there's a question for me?
For you and Tim, yes, and you can talk.
Yeah, well, I'll let Tim get in here for a moment, but I think the biggest one, Mark sort of probably already hit on, which is like, is my data being used for training purposes at all? I think sort of what the model is and who the AI vendor is just sort of important to know. And then, of course, as a this vendor who has some AI sort of powered experience or service, do they have a BAA in place with that AI vendor, just to make sure that AI vendor is sort of meeting the same standard of sort of like care when it comes to customer service, privacy, and other security controls, operational controls with regard to customer data. So anyway, yeah.
That's great. Tim.
Yeah. No, I would just echo a lot of what Don said. Like, there's the very boring tactical step of working with your legal team, understanding how your vendors are using the data. A lot of software companies are updating their terms of service to say, hey, here's how we use your data for training, or here's how we use third parties. And so there's just like the very boring tactical legal step of making sure that you understand kind of your core vendor's philosophy there. I think a big thing we spent a lot of time out at Rippling is just making sure these things are opt-in, that we're not going to like launch some surprise AI feature that you didn't have a chance, like the talent signal launch I mentioned earlier. Like, that's not like something we just turned on for everyone. It's like everyone has to opt into that and go through those conversations. And some of it is going a little bit, deeper than you normally would, to the example Donald used, and how architecturally does this work to understand, what are the pitfalls and make sure you're comfortable with how the vendor is using your data and how that software is functioning before you roll it out to your teams. But I think that there's just like a lot of just working to understand and what your company's process and level of comfort is and what your team's level of comfort is around these solutions, given they are so new.
New and moving fast, right? And that actually transitions us really well to kind of what's next. I mean, I feel like it's that future is now. It's like what's going to happen in 12 to 18 months, but what's going to happen in the next 3 months, 3 weeks? There's so much happening. And one of the things I loved, Kareem, that you brought up was that AI can actually make us more human. And I'd love to hear you dive into that kind of with a future focus. How do we think that that's gonna work, and especially in the healthcare space, but across the board?
Yeah, I think today as we operate, like the AI works within the confines of machines, right? Through a computer and others. And so the more that these tasks can be abstracted away to machines and models, the more that it releases us from our desk and from our computer and from the spreadsheet and from the PDFs, and actually allows you to engage on the work that follows through that. I mean, I think if everyone kind of reflected and said, what were my most meaningful interactions this week? It was probably a conversation that you had with someone. It was maybe an important meeting that you presented in. And then reflect, like, how many hours did it take for me to have that moment? And the answer might be, for that 1 hour meeting, I spent 25 hours in front of PowerPoint, or 50 hours in front of a spreadsheet. So I could have that 1 hour that's a meaningful meeting, that's where I actually got my joy and the impact. And so as I step back, it's, well, when we have agents, that 50 hours becomes maybe 50 minutes. And so what does that capacity create for you to have more of those meetings that you found to be very valuable, or more of those interactions with individuals that become very valuable? And I think we'll find that the people who have embraced this or leaned in into their certain categories will find much more joy out of their own work, but much more impact and productivity that comes out of it as well. And the two tend to go hand in hand. So I'm just optimistic across every dimension that we're going to be able to start to see that.
And some of those, as you have said, and others, those lower level tasks, I think in HR, for our HR leaders listening, that's things they're going to be able to use. I know at Rippling, Tim, you said about 3% of what you think is possible right now. What do you think in the next 12 months, even six, what do you think is going to be kind of table stakes for HR folks to be using in terms of AI technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think I know Donald's going to touch on a couple of the more like member facing applications here, but I think one area in particular I'm really excited about is there's just so much time and energy wasted by benefits teams and by brokers and employees dealing with this like Ben admin, broker, insurance carrier set of interactions, and everyone is frustrated with those interactions. And I think that in 18 months, a lot of the friction, hopefully all of the friction of those interactions and the quality of the data and the in syncness of those systems will just disappear. Because being able to like have automated phone calls, being able to validate data, just a lot of that friction and lossiness of information will disappear. I think like broadly within HR, I think there's just gonna be a lot higher quality and more real-time insights. So how is my team doing? Who's at risk for attrition? How do I spot top performers earlier? How do I improve hiring process? How do I better coach managers? Things that like everyone wants to do today. But to Kareem's point, like you either wouldn't be able to actually spot that insight because it would take 50 hours of work, or it's something that you're taking 20 hours a week to do now that you can get done in 5 minutes. And so being able to just ask a lot more questions and get a lot more insights of your data in these systems to enable you to just like better understand how your team and your company are performing. Those are the two things I think that will just become table stakes in the next 18 months. And then I'll definitely second whatever Donald says next on the member experience side.
Yeah, Donald, let's talk about the member experience side. We often at Nava will say choosing your healthcare plan is or close to the most important financial decision you're making every year. Not buying a house, it definitely is that year. And so I'd love to hear how you think HR can be using AI to help make better decisions there, both for their companies and for their employees.
Yeah, totally. I mean, again, over the next 18 months, it's the technology is moving so fast that I think my answer might be different 6 months from now. I will actually start by just giving a giant plus one to this notion of the kind of audio to audio. What's you know, we've kind of got the audio to audio unlock. If we get the agentic unlock there, I mean, that's it's gonna be. I'm here for that cyberpunk future. I'm very excited for it. And just again, just candidly, like the impact that that will have on like HR teams and the overhead of just benefits administration, but as well as just for a member too. Like one thing we talk about a lot, and this is it's not in my prepared remarks, but it's one of the number one feature requests that we get for the Nava Benefits app is people can search for doctors, in-network doctors and providers in the app, and they can see reviews and sort of where they practice, where they went to school and all this other stuff. And they see a phone number and they see an address for there. They're like, hey, can you book an appointment? And we've looked into this so much. It just turns out it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard to kind of connect that line of like book an appointment with a doctor. Again, I think Mark, we're counting on you, buddy.
No
I
pressure,
think,
Mark.
Hoping to make
yeah.
that easier in the future. Yeah.
But I mean, seriously, when you think about like, we already know, okay, here, provided this great search experience for an employee. They sort of know exactly, okay, great. Here's a doctor. You got a lot of questions there. Is this doctor accepting new patients? When can I sort of when could I sort of go see them? We know that they're practicing in this clinic. What days out of the week is that? And just be able to say like book an appointment and have an agent make a phone call. Like clinics and it's like small neighborhood clinics and even sort of like larger healthcare networks. I mean, they operate based on the phone. It's like a group of two or three people sitting behind a desk taking phone calls and looking at some scheduling software. Like that is not going to change anytime in the near future. And so like the rails here are going to be the phone. And when we can have an agent who can accomplish like scheduling a phone call and being able to reason through like the questions that I just asked, that's going to be sort of massive, massive unlock. Has nothing to do with kind of what you asked me about, which is, sort of around choosing the right healthcare plan. But every single part of this journey is going to just radically sort of change and get improved as a result of this technology. I will say on the, just because it is so core to what we do as a broker, helping people, helping employers design plans for their employee base and then helping those employees sort of choose the right plan and then sort of get the most out of it throughout the year. We've made a bunch of investments in there, which I'm really proud of. But again, I'm just going to keep going back to Tim's sort of 3%. We're probably 3% of like the journey there in terms of what's possible. And, again, the implications of this are huge. It is, which healthcare plan you choose is the most important financial decision that you make in a year, unless you buy like a house or a car. And the more that we can sort of like lead people to better decisions there, just the better it's going to be for everyone.
That's awesome. Well, we only have 10 minutes left. This time goes so fast. I could continue this conversation if I could hold you all for longer, because it's so interesting. So thank you for that. We want everyone to really walk away with a takeaway that they can go action in their current role, with their company, etc. So, Mark, I'm gonna start with you. And what's one immediate step that you think HR leaders here today and leadership within their orgs can take to start leveraging AI in their processes?
Yeah, I would recommend just thinking really hard about the employee experience and trying to work backward from that. We're sort of in the midst of this pretty massive transition where the world has woken up to the capabilities that AI can deliver, and I think in people's personal lives, folks are rapidly adopting and trying and using these technologies, and there's, I think, an increasing expectation that this will just be how things are done across our professional lives, our work lives, and personal lives. So I think the call to action is like, okay, if you think with that lens of the expectations are increasing and the capabilities are increasing, it's like, okay, how can you work backward from the employee experience to take advantage of some of the new capabilities and technologies in a way that creates a differentiated, better employee experience, removes some of the pain, some of the drudgery, some of the uncertainty, the lack of information, et cetera, and try to chip away at what, where you can adopt the technology, build something, et cetera, to improve that overall experience. And for the vendors you're working with, just ask, how are they leveraging AI or planning to? How are they weaving it into the products that they're building? Because you don't want to be left behind and have a early 2000s experience when everyone else is living in kind of the newer AI digital age.
Absolutely. I actually had a dream the other night. This is not on script, but I had a dream the other night that I was trying to dial up into my job at Microsoft, which was 10 years ago, and that only one person could use the phone at the hotel at one time to do the dial-in. So
Oh
nobody
man,
wants to go back there. But I
no.
think working back from that employee experience, we're all employees, right? It just makes it more human as you're assessing. So I love that, Mark. Thank you. Kareem, there's so many seeming opportunities out there. How do you share with them how they can evaluate? Like if they're looking at a vendor, what tools and resources are there out there for them that they should be utilizing to evaluate their options?
Definitely. I think I'll build on Mark's point and then I'll get to that specifically. One thing I would suggest is if people haven't to play with ChatGPT, I guess a shameless OpenAI plug, but the really just to get yourself familiar with the capabilities of this and even engaging from your personal standpoint. And what I would say is actually try to stump it because I think sometimes people ask the basic questions, they say that's interesting, and then they leave and they never get a sense of the full capabilities, but really try to push it. And if it gets you an answer that's not perfect, treat it like you would any employee, which is give it context and hints, and it will work its way to the right answer. And you'll start to see that, right? Like if an employee came to you with the wrong answer, you wouldn't say this person's hopeless, they're always wrong. You would say, if we were talking to someone on the clinical side, well, why don't you go focus on these types of journals for what the answer was going to be? And you'll find that the model can adjust itself to that, or even fund personal things if you wanted to recommend a restaurant. You could ask it broadly, or you could say, my three favorite restaurants in New York are this. I'm now in LA. What would you suggest based on that? And so the more you can kind of think about as someone you can train and develop, I think you'll start to see these capabilities and you'll be able to, I think, transport that thinking to your daily work and kind of where that goes. But to your point, I think it's hard to drive this transformation by yourself. And so as you think about your core workflows and the things that you want to work on, I think working either with partners or vendors where you learn something in that conversation from them and they bring you along. If they throw a bunch of jargon at you and just make you feel stupid, that's probably not the right partner for you. But also, if you're having a conversation and you didn't learn anything new from it, they're also probably not the right partner for you because things are moving so quickly in this field. You need someone who's embracing it, but also knows how to translate all the advancements in technology to your daily life and actually understand the challenges and the things that you're working with. And so I'd say if you find a partner that you're learning from every time you have a conversation, but they're bringing it down in a way that you can actually digest, those are the things I would lean into.
Love that. Thank you. Donald, you've talked a lot about what AI can do in terms of making the right choices, and just having the right information on benefits. What do you think that how HR should look at the ROI on that? Like how should they think about results-driven usage of those tools?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously I'll kind of answer that question very much through the lens of a benefits broker, benefits
I think
brokerage.
that's fair.
It's kind of industry by industry. There are probably just countless examples. But I mean, just candidly, brass tacks. Here's where we're seeing the ROI today. One is just reducing overinsurance. We know that this is a problem. A little over half of employees choose the wrong plan. Generally, they're overinsuring by 40% on average, and that sort of affects everyone in the company negatively. And so we're seeing kind of real savings and sort of driving real savings there. The other is again pretty kind of in the weeds, but it's something that we've invested a lot in at Nava, which is just bill reconciliation, carrier bill reconciliation. I know that El Meza I saw her in the chat. This is something that she put on our radar years ago. And it just turns out most carrier bills are filled with numerous errors in terms of employee enrollments. And this results in a lot of times employers overpaying for employees who are no longer at the company anymore, or exposing themselves to all sorts of like claims risk when folks who should have insurance don't have insurance, and the medical bills start to come in, and the employee is like, "Hey, whose fault is this?" This I know. This is probably one of Tim's biggest boogeyman at Rippling is the carrier enrollment, carrier eligibility dragon has like 1,000 heads on it. But we've built a lot of technology to go, hey, how can we just sort of ingest these carrier bills? How can we compare them to what's in the benefits administration system, and quickly, using AI, identify what those discrepancies are, and also quickly make sense of them and put them into context, because it's not just as simple as, well, the employee is in the Ben admin system, but not in United Healthcare bill, depending on the eligibility rules from United Healthcare, and is this employee just recently hired, or was there a qualifying life event or something like that? But again, this is a place where just again, 5-6 figures of savings for employers, and we, at least in Nava's case, if we offer this, we offer this for free. So there are just going to be more and more examples of that, where things that just would have taken a person, a day or two's worth of work to do will now take 90 seconds. Just sort of waiting for the result to come back.
Awesome. Tim, we're almost done, but I'd love to have you just quickly share, someone's kind of rethinking, like, I maybe need to dig into this more. Kareem mentioned ChatGPT. What else would you suggest as a starting point for rethinking?
Yeah, I think that, like, to a lot of the discussion today, what your partners, your vendors are now capable of is a lot higher. So you should be raising your expectations of what you're getting from them and the types of problems that you bring them. So pick a software system you use, pick all of the workflows you have around that are really painful, and bring those problems to those vendors. I mean, the bar should just be a lot higher for the creative solutions they're coming up with and the software that they're building to address those problems. And so my nudge was like, raise the bar for the folks that you work with and make sure that they're thinking about how they can solve a much broader range of problems in your day and your team's day.
I love that. That's a great way to end. Thank you all for your time today. Thank you to all the attendees. We had a great group. Really appreciated the conversation, and the time from everyone. We do, reach out. My email is amy.frampton@navabenefits.com if you've got further questions. We are going to post the recording. I just saw that question in there from Cassie. We are going to post the recording. We will share this out along with some additional resources. And of course, we'd love for you to get a VIP demo of what we're doing at Nava. Reach out to me and we'll get that set up immediately. So thank you to all participants for the time, and have a great rest of the week.